Kia ora koutou and welcome to Markets, Mystics and Mayhem, a weekly podcast with Kiwibank's Economics team alongside the occasional special guest. We'll delve into the data, decipher policy decisions, monitor the markets and analyse the issues impacting the Kiwi economy. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the podcast. This is part 2 in a special episode with Massey lecturer Brendan Moyle, who is also an environmental economist. Let's pick it up from where we left off. Why don't you start off? I've tried to explain roughly a little bit about a wildlife, environmental economics, all of that, but it probably comes best from you. Tell us a bit more about what you look at, what your research is.
When we look at a lot of conservation problems around the world, and in particular, very charismatic species, we find that there are a number of pressures that lead to their decline or near extinction. One is habitat loss, and that has an economic driver. So if you want to combat habitat loss, you have to understand something about economics. Another important driver is overharvest, and that includes illegal harvest, which we would describe as poaching. And that's been a major threat for many species. And again, if we're looking at harvest and black markets, well, there's a big clue in the word black market. This is an economic problem. And I actually have 2 degrees in zoology. So my transition to economics wasn't because I was going, yay, economics is the most exciting thing in the world. It was because it was incredibly useful. It was going to something that would make me a better conservationist. So just to kind of, I guess, illustrate, we as a community internationally have done a really bad job at trying to save rhinos. Why? Because rhinos are poached for their horn. Right. And way back in 1976, the international community said the solution is we're going to make it illegal to trade rhino horn. Okay. Since then, rhino numbers have been in decline continually. The northern white rhino, which you may remember, went extinct a couple of years ago. It's a subspecies of the white rhino, but we're still concerned. And most of the population now is in southern Africa, so South Africa and Namibia mostly. So what have we done? Well, we've persisted with this policy of maintaining this trade ban on rhino horn. And rather than anyone going, hey, maybe if it's not working, we should try something new, we've kind of stuck to it. Whereas I think if you take a more nuanced economist's approach, you would say, well, the problem's quite simple. The demand's there, and you've got rid of all the legal competition. So you've just created a scheme that's going to make a bunch of criminals very rich and have a lot less rhinos. So there is a segment within the conservation community that sort of advocate for, well, let's think about how we could have a regulated legal trade in rhino horn to suppress that black market or impact that black market. And it should work because you don't have to shoot rhinos to harvest the horn. It's like fingernails. Same material, it grows back. So you harvest it, grows roughly 10% per year. If I went to any investor and said, I can guarantee you a 10% return on your money, I think they'd be pretty delighted. Right? So the economics kind of does stack up.
So you would end up with something like a farming where you would have areas and people who would own the rhino or at least have them in their area, cut the horn off, it grows back, you meet the demand, and you're not out there killing, right?
Yeah. So one of the examples we had until very recently was John Hume in South Africa, who had a rhino farm, and I use farm loosely because these cover such areas of wilderness that they're larger than many nature reserves.
Yeah.
He had 2,000 white rhinos,
Right.
And the population of white rhinos in South Africa was somewhere between 25,000. At one stage, more rhinos were in private ranches or farms than they were in the wild.
In the wild.
And of course, there are a couple of reasons to remove the horn. One is it's a valuable resource.
Yeah.
Two, it discourages poachers because the rhinos don't have horns.
Yeah.
So this is one reason why we saw incentives matter. This is basic economics 101. If the wild rhinos have horns and the farm or ranched ones don't, then where are the poachers going to go?
Yeah, true.
It's a very similar case to, I think, the crocodile farming, which, am I right? Was that what your master's was on, crocodile farming?
Yes, my honours thesis had a look at the ways of conserving wildlife, just exactly like you said.
Yeah.
But with crocodiles, it was kind of cool because, you know, they you get a whole lot of eggs. So you get 100 eggs, and 97 of them die
In the wild.
In the wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you put them into a farm, you've got like 50 odd that survive, right? So you've got all these extra.
Closer to 100, yeah.
Close to 100 now.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And the thing about crocodiles is they're very unattractive wildlife. So
True.
Things like tigers and rhinos and elephants and bears and pandas, everybody wants to save, right? But with crocodiles, what we can't do is go to the public and say, look at the friendly, cuddly crocodile. You know, isn't it like a panda? You know, don't you want to give us money to save it? No, I mean, the Australian saltwater crocodile can grow up to 7 meters long.
Oh, they're massive.
Weighs a ton. Even at 5 meters, it's going to be 500 kilograms. It's a brain the size of a walnut, and it regards people as a slow pink snack food. Right. This is not an animal we can go to the public and say, let's save it because it's wonderful. They kind of are amazing, but they're not in the league of pandas. And it's very hard to feel affectionate towards an animal that kills and eats people, kills and eats livestock. So the solution was very simple. We had to make them worth money. Lots and lots of money. And when something has value, and unfortunately for crocodiles, the value we can find from them is mostly their harvested skins, then they start to protect the wild resource, develop it. So to take crocodiles again, why have the numbers gone up? Well, for a number of reasons. One is, as a landowner, and that's whether you're an Aborigine or a European or in Papua New Guinea, local villages in the East Sepik River, one thing you're going to do is protect the crocodile nests from predation or destruction from local pests. So in Australia, pigs root up crocodile nests, destroy a lot of the eggs. If that's worth money, you're going to protect those nests.
Yeah.
You fence the nesting sites off from livestock, so you actually have more nesting sites available.
Yep.
And you only take a portion of those eggs, most of which you identified, die anyway. And then you can see this expansion in wild populations because the locals are saying, we get paid money for eggs, but the only way we can have eggs is if we have adult crocodiles.
Yes.
The more adult crocodiles and the more nesting sites we have, the more money we make.
Yeah. And it works.
And it's worked brilliantly.
Yeah.
It's worked for the estuarine or saltwater crocodile. It's worked for the Nile crocodile. It's worked fantastically for the American alligator. It's classic skins are great.
So you put an economic value on it, which is, the skin, meat to an extent, jaws, whatever, and next minute you're protecting it.
Yeah, because incentives, from an economist's viewpoint, incentives matter, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we can work incentives that we want to protect nature because it's wonderful, or it produces ecosystem services, or a variety of reasons why we want to have nature. But with crocodiles, it has to be money because you don't feel affectionate towards a 5-meter, half-ton
No,
crocodile.
no.
You can be in awe of them.
But so, I mean, that was like a perfect example of how things, really work. But there are, I think, more difficult cases where you have animals that don't reproduce a great deal, like a whale. What are the solutions in those sorts of, for those sorts of species?
Well, I think if you look at whales, the issue is it's not economic to hunt whales.
Right.
If we go back to the IWC in the 1960s, most of the whaling nations, International Whaling Commission, most of the whaling nations switched over by the early 70s to be anti-whaling nations. So New Zealand, we were still hunting whales on the Cook Strait during, I think, the early 1960s.
Right.
Effectively, the economics doesn't work. Right? The demand for whales products has dropped a lot because we have lots of decent substitutes. And it
Don't
costs...
need whale oil for lighting anymore.
Oddly, one of the biggest users of whale oil in the 50s and early 60s was NASA.
Really?
Doing what?
To lubricate the rockets and the...
Right.
Oh, wow.
Because
Did
it
not
was
know that.
because it was a better grade lubricant than
Yeah.
what they could make synthetically.
Oh, wow. But now we can make it synthetically.
Oh yeah. We don't need any whales to be. Or maybe we should have a closer look at SpaceX. I don't know. Yes, but it costs a lot of money to send whaling ships out to sea.
Yes.
There's not a big market. There's a small market for meat in Japan and Iceland, but I think the last couple of years Iceland hasn't sent any whaling ships out.
Yeah.
Sometimes having a substitute
Is all you need.
Really helps, yeah.
Yeah.
Substitute for rhino horn?
There isn't really.
Yeah.
Because it's got one unique features as part of traditional Chinese medicine.
Yes.
And when I say traditional Chinese medicine, I don't mean aphrodisiacs.
Right.
Rhinos are not poached as an aphrodisiac. It's typically treated, or rather, it's typically used as an antipyretic. It's used to treat hot diseases, fevers, that sort of thing. It's also carved into artwork, which is probably the larger.
Is that the biggest bit?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I remember one of the pieces of research you did looked at ivory as, a valuable good.
Yeah.
And something we've been seeing recently with just all the volatility that's happened in the US and people putting their money into other things like gold, have you seen a rise in either the rhino horns or the ivory from elephants recently, or not so much?
Not so much, not recently. What we did see in 2008 following the GFC, a surge in demand for elephant ivory and also rhino horn. And that was quite interesting.
What caused that?
Well, one explanation, or one theory, is that the international community at CITES allowed a one-off trade of ivory to Japan and China in 2008. Then we saw poaching increase 2009, 2010 especially.
In expectation of more of these deals, or?
No.
Oh.
So let's think about it. This one theory is that was promoted by many conservationists at the time was basically once Chinese consumers got a taste for ivory, they just needed more of it. The legal supply wasn't sufficient. It was, this was more potent than crack cocaine, that they just had to have this ivory, and that was driving that black market demand. So that's a nice simplistic explanation. It goes, this happened 2008, then we saw poaching increase 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
Obviously they're linked.
Yeah.
If you put your economist's hat on, you go, that seems a little odd, right? Because normally when you introduce, say, a legal supply or any new firm to a market, the incumbents don't go, this is a good thing. No. I mean, take our supermarkets. The results of the review of our supermarket duopoly isn't going, we're not going to introduce any competition or make it easy because that will make them even wealthier. It's the exact opposite. So we had to sort of go through and go, what's going on here? What's driving our elephant ivory demand? And if we'd picked 2008, we go, a lot happened in 2008. We had the global financial crisis. So what are some of the consequences of the global financial crisis? A big one is that interest rates drop around the world.
Yeah.
All right. Reserve banks, central banks around the world are desperate to try and stimulate the economies around the world. So they're dropping interest rates. What do we go from? About 7.5% to 2.5%?
Yeah.
Yeah, massive cuts in interest rates.
8.25%.
Wow.
We started off at.
Yeah, it was big. Right?
Yeah.
So you got the sense that they're cutting interest rates. And of course, stock markets are tanking.
Mm.
And that led to a flood of investors thinking, okay, I have to protect my wealth. What am I going to spend my money on to protect my wealth? Well, we saw an increase in demand for things like jade.
Yeah.
We saw an increase in demand for gold.
Yeah.
We saw an increase in demand for real estate, if you could get it, because that also helped with the fact that real estate prices were low. European art sales from East Asia start to go. And if you're an unscrupulous investor, you can buy elephant ivory. So elephant ivory works like gold bars. You buy a gold bar because it's basically a wealth.
Yeah.
It goes up and down according to market forces. You're not buying gold bars because what you're wanting to do is create sometime in the future a whole bunch of gold watches and jewelry. It's just there for one reason. It's an asset, part of my wealth portfolio.
Yeah.
Elephant ivory works the same way. It's storable. It has value. So you can stop.
Is it like gold in that we've valued it for thousands of years? So it's kind of ingrained in a lot of people's.
Yeah. If we're looking at East Asia, especially the Asian elephant used to range all the way up into the Yangtze River. So southern China had a large population naturally of elephants.
Yeah.
And historically, people in early civilizations didn't actually hunt elephants because that's a big job and there's so many other things that are easier to catch.
Yeah.
But elephants would die. And the tusks would stay intact.
Yeah.
So you could start carving them, and they were usually reserved for royalty and nobility because that's how royalty and nobility works in those societies.
Yeah.
But then you have this culture that's grown up around ivory. For centuries.
Centuries. Yeah.
Centuries and centuries. And one brutal fact is that every unscrupulous investor who had put some of their wealth in ivory were right. They made money. If they'd put the money in bank deposits or bonds, they would have lost money. If they put it into the Shanghai Stock Exchange or similar, they would have lost money.
A lot.
If they put it into ivory, they saw their wealth go up.
Right.
So they're not stupid. I mean, unscrupulous, maybe a little evil, but they're not stupid.
Although not if it's part of your culture for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're not. They actually don't want it into carvings.
It's pure wealth.
Yeah.
And it helped that shipping costs were also falling at the time too, right? Because I think something you mentioned is that ivory is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So that in combination with the lower interest rates and your wealth going down, just a whole cataclysmic series of events, right?
Yeah. So the global metric for shipping costs is the Baltic Dry Index.
Yeah.
Which you go, yes, he knows his stuff. And we saw it go, take the peak at the start of 2008 to roughly 25% of what it was at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, and this is because shipping globally after the GFC collapsed.
Yeah.
Industrial production in Japan dropped 30% in 6 months.
Yes.
And of course, the shipping companies are going, we need to move stuff, anything.
Yeah.
And when you look at black markets, well, a perennial problem is you've got to get the product from where it's harvested or sourced to your end market. Now, for things like tiger parts, it's quite easy. You can put some bones in a suitcase, or you can put some skins in the back of a truck and drive into China or somewhere in Central Asia. But rhino horn is heavy, really heavy. I assume no one here has picked up a ivory tusk.
No, I've sat on one.
Oh.
On a live elephant.
Okay, it's a little different.
A little different.
But the average weight's about 5 kg, which is quite a few blocks of cheese, I suppose.
Yeah.
But they can weigh 25, 30 plus kg. They're heavy. So you can't put that into a suitcase. It's too big. Right. It's not going to pass the weight machine at the airport.
True.
And it doesn't actually have a lot of value compared to, say, premium wildlife products like tiger parts or rhino. And you can't chop it into smaller pieces because that destroys its value, right? Because this is an economic decision. You want the complete tusk, preferably the highest grade possible. So the only solution is shipping containers. You hide them in shipping containers, and they're shipped in shipping containers. The peak of the poaching period, we were getting a lot of stuff that was 1 ton plus an ivory. Sort of 4 ton seizures of ivory were not uncommon. And I think we had a peak with one shipment intercepted in Malaysia that was over 20 tons.
Wow. How many elephants is that?
I can't do the maths off the top of my head, but if you go roughly, one tusk is 5 kg on average.
Yeah.
You need, so 10 kg is
2.
Yeah, 1 elephant.
Yeah.
And so divide 20 tons by 10 kg, and you're going to get hundreds.
Quite a few dead.
Hundreds, yeah. One odd thing we noticed also is that some of the tusks had been sourced from elephants that had been poached many years before. The bad guys had effectively stockpiled ivory
Yes.
and just waited for those costs to come down
Yes, and then jumped in.
and then shipped them over. And this is, I think, the value of taking an economist's view on how these markets work rather than...
So that one-off shipment, basically, you're saying at the end of that, they had to restock, or what was the...
Well, the problem was the legal market and the black market were operating completely separately.
Yes.
Who was buying tusks? Guys who wanted to maintain their wealth. So all they were interested in was tusks.
Yeah.
The more tusks, the better, and they could trade within themselves for these tusks. The legal trade was a tiny fraction of what was being poached every year. So I can't remember exactly, but 40 tons was allowed to be exported to China, and that had to last them 10 years. So they're putting 4 to 5 tons of legal ivory into their carving industry.
Right.
And the black market's about 200 tons.
Right.
And there's about 30, 35 ivory factories, and I do the quote marks because these are tiny outfits. They could be just a dozen artisanal carvers working on these things. So they have a very slow output of ivory. So this market's basically completely separate to the black market.
Right.
And it's not going to have any impact because 4 tons of ivory in a legal market is not going to dilute 200 tons in a black market.
I think the elephants, the rhinos, the crocodiles, these are all really good examples of how for me, what I loved about economics was that it isn't actually all just about finances, and it's so much broader as well.
That's right.
It's at the heart of it. It's about, scarcity and choices and incentives and trade-offs.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I've got a story to tell.
Oh, sorry. Before we move on, go on.
Yeah. So where rubber hits the road, my wife and I did a hike Annapurna Base Camp, right? We're in the middle of the Himalayas, right in the middle, about 7 days into this, hike that was 3 weeks long. And I come into this tiny little village in the middle of nowhere, right?
This is the first Westerner I have seen.
In a long time. Just so happened to be sitting down over in the corner, quite a tall guy, really long beard, like he'd been in the bush for 6 months. I think he had been. So I thought, I'm going to chat to that guy. So I walked over, sat down, started talking to him. And it turns out he's from an organisation called Wild Tiger, a guy by the name of Jack Kinross. And I started chatting to him, and he's like, "Yeah, we're looking for tigers in the area because they're not normally here, but we've heard sightings, blah blah blah." And I said, "Mate, my thesis was on protecting wildlife using, economics, blah blah blah." And he said, "Tell me about it." And so I told him about it. He said, "I read that." I said, "No, you didn't." He goes, "Yes, I read that." He said, "I follow Brendan Moyle from Massey University. He's a conservationist running around trying to find poachers." And I'm like, what are the chances that one of the 3 people who read my thesis happened to be in the jungle that day?
Such a small world.
Oh, yes.
Have you heard of Wild Tiger?
Yeah.
The organisation? Yeah.
One of the things we get sort of twisted and bitter about is how much money goes into tiger conservation.
Yes.
Because
it's the poster animal, isn't it, that everyone loves?
That and pandas.
Yeah.
And pandas.
Yeah, but see,
Not crocodiles.
No. I mean, sort of coming from crocodiles, where you go, where can we find some money? Where can we find some money?
Yeah.
And then sort of going across to tigers, and it's like, we're spending about $100 million a year to try and protect
tigers.
What?
Yeah.
$100 million. And what's the outcome? Well, there's a lot less tigers than when we started, but
So they're not getting anywhere.
we're hopeful. We're hopeful.
Yeah.
Eventually, the bad guys are going to wake up and go, "Oh yes, I see the error of my ways. I've been evil for too long. I shall turn over a new leaf and become virtuous."
Doesn't happen.
It hasn't happened yet, but
No.
we have some very optimistic people that one day
Yes.
it will happen.
You've been tuned into This is Kiwi Economics, Markets, Mystics and Mayhem. We'll be back next week for more analysis and insights.
Any views or information shared in this podcast, while given in good faith, aren't necessarily the views of Kiwi Bank.